Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the launch of Riverwatch 2023. Bon après-midi, tout le monde. Bienvenue au lancement.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Riverwatch 2003. And spokespersons today are the Kyle Levitt, Jill Mapia, warning of preparedness meteorologist at Environment and Climate Change Canada, Don Fox, Director of Air and Water Sciences for the Department of Environment and Local Governments, and Julie McKay, Manager of Land Information Infrastructure Secretariat at Service New Brunswick. Greg Carroll, Acting Hydro Region Manager at NB Power, is also here to answer questions.
NBMO Director Kyle Levitt, Jill Mapia, Warning Preparedness Meteorologist and at Environment and Climate Change Canada, Don Fox, Director of Air and Water Science for the Department of Environment and Local Governments, and Julie McKay, Manager of Land Information Infrastructure Secretariat at Service New Brunswick. Greg Carroll, Acting Hydro Region Manager at NB Power, is also here to answer your questions. Avant de céder la parole au directeur.
Before the emergency measure organization, because mute your mics.
To EMO's director, I would like to ask everyone to ensure their microphones are placed on mute. Kyle Levitt.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. The New Brunswick Emergency Measures Organization is pleased to join with our partners in launching the 2023 Riverwatch program. We know how important this program is to all New Brunswickers. Riverwatch is a joint effort between the Department of Environmental and Local Government and the New Brunswick Emergency Measures Organization. Other partners such as NB Power and Environment and Climate Change Canada, provincial and other state agencies to our south, are involved in monitoring and forecasting the weather flow in the rivers and streams. We will watch very closely the melting ice and snow around the watercourses, particularly the St. John River Basin. But other watercourses can also present risks and will be monitored accordingly. We are pleased to count on the expertise of the Hydrology Center of the Department of Environment and Local Government for its flood forecasts and to identify potential dangers. Each morning, officials will collect data from various partners and use this in the river modeling and forecasting. The public will be then informed of the potential risks. We encourage all New Brunswickers to visit the Riverwatch website throughout the spring freshet and to follow NBEMO on Twitter and Facebook for the latest information. We want to remind all New Brunswickers living along the watercourses to know the risks associated to their area, to have an emergency plan, and be prepared to deal with the unexpected events and listen to trusted sources for information. We certainly hope for a quiet Riverwatch season again this year. It's always hard to predict exactly when the flooding will happen, but it typically occurs between March and May, and there's no reason to believe that 2023 will be any different. Flooding is highly dependent on day-to-day weather. The weather is difficult to accurately predict beyond a few days and can change quite quickly. Several factors influence flooding. During the spring freshet, a rapid increase in temperature combined with heavy rain can increase water levels quickly. As ice begins to break up, ice jams can occur, causing rapid water rise and flooding. Ice jams can also create flooding in areas that wouldn't be subjected to flooding otherwise. Those who live or work near the waterways should always take extra care in the spring and have an emergency plan in place. Get ready to move your belongings to higher ground if your property is near a waterway or is in the area that is prone to flooding. Evaluate or remove possessions from basements and low-lying structures. Small business owners should take stock of their inventory as well. Please keep in mind that disaster financial assistance is only available to help New Brunswickers for losses that could not be insured. Overland flood insurance is available in our province. Contact your insurer for information. The Riverwatch website and the Get Prepared website have information and links to additional resources. New Brunswickers are reminded that everything they need to sustain themselves should be on hand for at least 72 hours. Residents can report ice jams and localized flooding at any time by calling 1-800-561-4034. By working together, we will ensure that New Brunswickers are well informed and prepared. Thank you very much. I'd now like to turn it over to Jill to talk about weather forecasting.
Thank you, Kyle. Good afternoon, everyone. I will be speaking of the weather conditions that we've seen since the beginning of this winter, current conditions that we're seeing right now, as well as an outlook for spring. Bonjour, je vais vous présenter.
And we're going to present the meteorological conditions in the beginning of this winter and the situation at the present time and provisions for the spring. And it's a chronology in Fredericton. These are data for precipitation in Fredericton. The blue bars indicate precipitation on a daily basis, and the black line indicates the cumulative, and the continuous line is the average. So December and January compared to February, their percentages tied to the average. And below, temperatures varied between the 3 months for February, and above for December and January, and below for February. And the dotted line indicates the average, and the red and the blue indicate differences.
Chronology for winter for Fredericton. On the top, we can see the precipitation data for Fredericton. The blue bars indicate the precipitation, daily precipitation. The black line indicates the cumulative precipitation, and the dotted line indicates the average for the Fredericton region. And as we can see, December and January were very wet in comparison to December, according to the percentages related to the average. And below, the temperature varied between the three months from below in February and to above in December and January from the average. And as well, the dotted line indicates the average, and the red and the blue indicate the standard deviations. Next slide. Voici une carte qui montre l'anomalie.
Here's a map that shows the temperature anomaly for the province on the scale on the left. The temperature anomaly was 2 to 3 degrees above the average, and the temperature was extraordinarily warm during January.
Map that demonstrates the temperature anomaly for the entire province. According to the scale on the left, the temperature anomaly was 2 to 3 degrees above the average or the normal for this time of year, and the temperature was extremely warm during the month of January. Next slide.
Equally, the precipitation anomaly on this map for snow on the province, and most were under average for New Brunswick, as indicated in green.
The precipitation anomaly, like the temperature anomaly, but this precipitation, it includes both rain and snow, and it's for the province and the surroundings, which would include the basin up into northern Maine. Most of the region was above normal for the the winter season in New Brunswick, and those are indicated in green on the map. Next. On peut voir 60.
You can see 60 to more than above 60 over 100 centimeters of snow at the end of February, and 60 centimeters at the center of the province, and less than 20 centimeters for the southern part of the province. And these data are a bit below the average, except in the northwest for this time of year, because they received more rain rather than snow.
From this graphic, that 60 to 100 centimeters or more snow was on the ground at the end of February. And in the center of the province, it was 20 to 60 centimeters of snow on the ground, and for regions in the south, there was less than 20 centimeters on the ground. These amounts are a little bit below our average for that time of year, except in the northwest, where it was more near normal. And these values are like this because we received probably more rain than snow for the period of February. Next slide. Concernant la prévision.
As for the long-term outlook for temperature, we're forecasting a scenario that is near or above normal, and according to our climatology.
The long-term forecast for temperature, we are forecasting a bit of a varied scenario. The gray areas indicate near normal, and the areas in yellow or orange indicate above normal for our outlook, and this is based on our climatology of 30 years. Next slide. Côté précipitation.
As for precipitation, there's an indication above normal in regions of the south, but no indications for the rest of the province, so it's close to normal.
There's an indication for below normal for the regions in the south, but there is no indication for the rest of the province, and therefore this means the precipitation should be near normal for our spring. And that concludes my presentation. I will hand it over to Don.
Thank you very much, Jill. Hello, everyone. My name is Don Fox, and I'm Director of Air and Water Sciences at Department of Environment and Local Government. While we are all excited to welcome back the warm temperatures, we need to be ready to address the risks that come with spring flooding. The Hydrology Center, which is part of Environment and Local Government, is a key partner in Riverwatch. Our contribution is to provide scientific and engineering support to the program. We are responsible for collecting and compiling data such as water levels and flows, precipitation, temperature, snow depth, and ice movement. We are also responsible for providing regular flood forecasts, and we provide any additional expertise as required. This year, the Hydrology Center will once again provide 5-day forecasts, and we will identify any potential concerns that may arise during the spring flooding season. During the first few weeks, the forecast may be produced every 2 to 3 days, as required based on weather and conditions of the St. John River Basin. After that, forecasts will be provided daily as needed. It is important to remember that we cannot predict the severity of floods too far in advance. Flooding is highly dependent on day-to-day weather, and weather forecasts can change quickly. New Brunswickers living along a watercourse should remain particularly vigilant until the snow is completely gone and water levels return to normal. No area near rivers is safe from flooding. There is always a potential risk, and we advise to be particularly cautious in areas where past flooding has occurred. There are several factors that can influence spring flooding. Rapid increases in temperature, combined with heavy rain events, can cause increased water levels and significant flooding. As ice begins to break up, ice jams can also occur, causing rapid rise in water levels and flooding. If flooding is to be avoided from these winter melts and rain events, temperature fluctuations are a good way to gradually release water from the snowpack and therefore reduce the risk of severe flooding. That means warm days and cool nights help the snowpack to melt more gradually. The depth of snow and the amount of water in the snowpack, which is called snow water equivalent, can also play a role in flooding. Our latest snow survey for early March shows snow depths increasing from south to north, with a small area of southern New Brunswick ranging between 16 and 30 centimeters, and northwestern New Brunswick ranging between 76 and 90 centimeters. For northwestern New Brunswick, this is comparable to last year. For southern New Brunswick, there is more snow this year compared to last year for the same time period. Updated surveys are being conducted this week, with the report available Friday. And if I can point people to the first slide, just to show in map form what I just said in terms of numbers. The map on the left is for 2023, snow depth in centimeters. You can see that it ranges from a green color in the southern part of New Brunswick, going up through various shades of blue, and up in northwestern New Brunswick, dark blue. And that pretty much outlines those numbers that I just said for snow depths. The map on the right is 2022. And you can see that in the southern part of New Brunswick, there's much more green area, which means less snow depth for last year. And in the northwestern part of New Brunswick, there's a much smaller dark blue area. So all that to say, there was a lot of snow the 1st of March in New Brunswick. Next slide, please. The amount of water contained in the snowpack, which is snow water equivalent, also increases from south to north. There is a small area in southern New Brunswick that has between 25 and 50 millimeters, while northwestern New Brunswick has between 176 and 200 millimeters. In general, there is more water in the snowpack this year compared to the same time period last year. And referring to the snow water equivalent slides, notice that it's in millimeters. And again, the map on the left is for 2023, ranging from light blues in the southern portion of New Brunswick all the way up to dark blues in northwestern New Brunswick. And comparing to 2022, you can see that in southern New Brunswick, there's a lot more green area and a fair amount less snow water in the snowpack last year compared to this year. Next slide, please. If I can focus now just on the St. John River Basin. For the St. John River Basin in general, the amount of water held in the snowpack is normal compared to the very long-term average. And this map is showing snow water equivalent, but instead of millimeters like the previous slide, it's in percent of normal. And that's compared to a very long term average that we've collected over years. There is more water held in the snowpack this year compared to last year for the same time period, and last year was below the long-term average. So next slide, please, shows the 2022 snow water equivalent in percent of normal, and you can basically see that the blues are lighter, and there is a fairly large green area showing slightly less than normal over the long-term average. It is important to remember a main driver of flooding is day-to-day weather, which is unpredictable too far in advance. Regardless of the state of the snowpack, there could be a significant flood, no flood at all, or somewhere in between. At this stage, there's no way to be sure. We are always ready, and we work closely with the Riverwatch team to provide updates to them and to the public as soon as new information becomes available. If you would like to stay informed, the best way to do so is through the Riverwatch website. All forecasts are available at the website or through the Riverwatch mobile viewer. We advise all New Brunswickers to be prepared, especially if you have experienced flooding in the past. Thank you, merci. And I will pass it over to Julie. Thank you.
Thank you, Don, and good afternoon. So this afternoon, I'm going to give you just a very brief overview of the Riverwatch mobile website that Don just mentioned. It's a mobile-friendly website that provides information on the forecasts and the water levels and that the Hydrology Center provides us. Riverwatch Mobile is a collaborative effort between Service New Brunswick, Department of Environment and Local Government, and Department of Justice and Public Safety. So to access the website, there's a link to Riverwatch Mobile at riverwatchdnb.ca/riverwatch. You can also access it through GOMB. To access the information for each location, you can click on the location in the list, or you can click on View and select a map and select the location on the map. The map also gives you an overview of the alert levels throughout the province. And next slide. Each location has information on the water levels, but the amount of information available varies depending on the location of the station. And that is usually explained on the chart for each location. The water level information shown in the slides is test data that you see on your slides, as there's no forecast available at the time. I do believe they're forecasting now. So starting at the top of the screen, you can see the location, the date of the displayed forecast, and the date of the next forecast. The next forecast information is new this year. The top line on the chart, the blue line, is the record flood level in each location. So that's for a reference, so you can see as the water levels rise. The black line is the flood level. Red means warning, the flood event is certain or imminent, and it's 0.5 meters below flood level. Orange level is watch, so that means it's 1 meter below flood stage. Yellow is advisory, and that means it's 2 meters below flood stage. And green is normal. And these colors are also used on the map and in the list displaying the location names. So you can quickly get an overview of the province of which alert levels are where. And next slide. The chart is split vertically with measured water levels on the left and of the dotted line and forecasted water levels on the right. Some locations will only have measured levels, some will only have forecasted, and some will have both, depending on their location and the time. The measured levels are available for 4 days prior to the forecast, and the forecast is for 6 days. Clicking on the small dots that represent the water levels will give you the value of that time and day. You can also swipe left or right on the charts to quickly go through all the stations. Next slide. Above the date for the forecast is a link to the real-time water levels from Environment Canada from gauges that they have in the rivers. They're available for 11 of the 25 locations. If there's not a link that you see in the chart, then we don't have the real-time location for that area. And next slide. Lastly, by clicking on the help icon, you'll get the additional information about the alert levels, a link to the Riverwatch website, EMO's Twitter, and contact information. Any questions about water levels or flooding, you can use those as contact. Any technical issues, you can contact the GOMB email. And thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you. We have 20 minutes for questions from members of the media. We also have Greg Carroll with us today if you have any questions for NB Power. Each reporter will have one question and a follow-up. You have the right to pose your question in the official language of your choice. Nous avons 20 minutes.
We have 20 minutes for questions from members of the media. I remind you, we have with us Greg Carroll. If you have questions about NB Power, each reporter will have one question and a follow-up. You have the right to ask your question in the official language of your choice.
With Allison Sampson, CTV.
With the new changes for the mobile site, will that include like push notifications to warn people in their area if there is a dramatic change?
At this time, we do not have the ability to push notifications, but it's something we would consider in the future.
Is there any sort of emergency alert situation integrated with that?
Not with this application. No.
Robert Lupien, Global. Sounds good. Savannah Odd, Telegraph Journal.
Yeah, so some of the forecasting was indicated, there were some temperature anomalies shown in pH levels. I guess I'm just wondering, what does all of that mean, I guess, for the general outlook compared to last season? Or are we anticipating, based on those trends, a particularly bad season, something in line with what we've seen? I know it's a bit hard to know for sure, but I guess based on those trends, is there a range in mind for how severe it might look?
I believe that we can't truly predict. It's so hard, given the changes in the weather. But I would defer to Jill, her assessment based on their previous long-term history. But I don't believe that we're any further in a state of alarm than we would be on a regular basis, so.
For what it means for flood forecasting, we're just too early. And if your question is like how good is the flood season going to be this year, it's still too early. There's enough snow. We could see a very severe flood season this year, or we could have a great season, and everything depends on the weather. And weather forecasts can change. The other thing to keep in mind is ice jams. They can occur at any time, and if we get severe ice jamming in a certain location, waters can go up very, very quickly. And keep in mind that everything we do at the Hydrology Center, we're in constant communication with EMO. Like on a daily, on an hourly basis as needed. They're looking at the same data we are. So in terms of preparedness, EMO is fully knowledgeable, and yeah.
Yeah, wanted to put some context with that data. I guess I'm just wondering, kind of building on that, I'm wondering, I guess, what alerts are in place and how able to try to not for the app. And I guess, are there certain learnings what's that we want maybe are able to do steps or make sure they're prepared or they're not making mistakes?
Yeah, good question. I think, again, referring back to how we prepare for any type of event within the province, we always speak about the 72 hours preparedness package that homes and businesses should be looking to have. So there's really no difference in that approach with the approach in Frechette. Everybody should have a plan. They should be very cognizant of the river and stream levels around them, and be monitoring what's being distributed with the news and also through our websites. I think in the end, if there's any sort of a concern that's identified, again, we have our alerting system that we push out to the public, and also social media where it would be pushed out for that information. So. Pardon me?
When you say alerting system, what are you?
I would say for the most part, people should be looking to the apps and the mobile awareness, and then listen to any news and broadcasts that we push out for the areas that are affected.
Online with Mathilde Pinault, Radio-Canada.
Oui, donc vous m'entendez bien?
So you can hear me? Yes. Yes, perfect. So I know it's hard to predict what can happen over the next few days and weeks and months, but given the case that we get with the flooding in the province, what would be the challenges for emergency measures in case of flooding?
Well, the challenges that we always face is making sure that the communities are communicating with each other, that they're aware of the situation of the water levels, and that they are actually prepared to react accordingly. But as far as the coordination of assets to respond to any area that is more impacted than others, the province stands ready to be able to assist, so.
Parfait, merci.
Thank you.
Now, Canadian Press. We'll go next. David Gordon, HMA. David, are you with us? We'll go again with Ina Alon, Canadian Press. Well, thank you, everyone.
Take a photo to ask.
Hello.